All right, class, as promised, I would share with you how I created this spreadsheet. First of all the information comes from the Word document. So you'll see this Monday, Tuesday through Sunday example. It'll give you that the total for that amount was 2275. So if you'll look in this area right here in the function bar, actually let me make that a little bit bigger for you. You'll see here there's no function. Apologies. Uh, what we have is just raw data. There's no equal sign in here, so this is just data. However, you will see in the total column, we have the sum, and that goes from B3 to B9. So, oops, sorry. So what we have is B3. So here's B, column B. Here's row 3. So B3. Here's B9. And so when we check this here, we get equals sum B3. We use the colon to show a range of B9. That's how I did this here. So if you will, create your own spreadsheet. I just used your financial sheet here, workbook, and then added a new sheet with the plus sign and put all this information in here for practice. So again, you can create this real quick and easy. Now over here, you'll see this is just text. I just put mean, median, and mode. And then I did this average one. This could actually just be average. Okay? And that's just free text. You'll see it right here. It's just free text. And then what I did is I used the average formula or function, which is equals average B3 through B9. Notice how when I'm in this cell and I click into the function bar here, notice how it's telling me I am dealing with this data, B3 through B9. If I click in this data and come back into this function bar, you'll see that I'm still dealing with this data, except this time I'm using the median function. Equals median B3, that colon stands for B9. I'm sorry, the range from B3 to B9. Now if you look at the mode, you'll see there is no mode. Equals mode, and that's because no value is repeated, so we don't have a mode. And just for fun, if I change this to 200, now watch our values change. This is going to change. 2275 will change, 325 will change, median will change, and even the average will change. But I'm going to set a mode. So notice how we have a mode of 200 because it appears twice. But look, the mean or the average changed. The median changed. The mode changed. All of that changed. Control Z to undo what I just did, so we're back to where we are. Again, quick and dirty. Now this average, another way you can do the average, which we have this function, average, but if you wanted to do it the long way, which is sum all of this, which would be 2275, and divide it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then you'll get the same thing as 325. So that's why this average, which is a little bit longer way of doing it, is the same as the average function itself. Okay? Now on the next one we had to figure out which one of these was the better process. Again, all I did was set up my data. Now here, in case you're not aware, whenever I put this cell, I can drag, shrink these cells. I can also double click in between right here and it'll resize it for me. But they're center aligned. And all I did was use the center align tool right here. And then I had it wrap text. Okay? And then I said, well, process A had 2,000 cookies, process B had 3,000, and process C had 1,500. I did our little trick with the fractions, which, by the way, 2/5 equals 0.4 in decimal, and 5/8 equals 0.625 in decimal. So this is another little trick. And then 1/12 will equal 0.083. 11/12 will be 0.917. 3/8 is 0.375. 3/5 is 0.6. And you can see all that right here. Also, if I just double click in there, You can see the same thing. See that? Okay. Now we're going to get into our defects amount. Well, the defect amount is we're simply going to take what's in B14, which is 2,000 cookies. Now watch what happens. See, when I clicked up here in the function bar, it's telling me B14 times C14. So 2,000 times 2/5 equals what? 800. Same thing for here. For the defective count on process B, well, you'll see that's B15 times C15. And so what we end up with is 1,875. If I do it for process C, you'll see B16 times C16, and that gives me 125. Now the acceptable amount, there's a couple of ways we can do this, but just keep it in the spirit of practicing. You'll see all I do is take the cookies produced times the acceptable fraction. And I did that for process B and process C. And that's how we were able to figure out that process C may be the more efficient, more productive, more profitable process. Okay. Now something we can do with sample size. This is what I showed you before, was I just created this little column, or I'm sorry, these little headers. Right, I centered aligned them, which is done right here. I made sure it was aligned on the bottom just for personal preference. But the sample, this is 20. If you remember, it said 20 out of 150 people are aged 60 or higher. So what is that percentage? Well, this is how we solve it. We simply take A21, we divide it by B21, so the smaller number divided by the larger number, and we're going to multiply by 100, and that gives us 13.33%. We had the other, where it was 10 and 28, and you can see here, same formula. Take the smaller number, divide it by the larger number, multiply it by 100, and we get the percentage. Now the way I like to think about it, whenever I'm looking at what is, a piece of something or what is a portion, then I always think about the way I learned it in school, which was is 20 is what percent of a larger number. The smaller number is what percent of a larger number. So 20 is 13.33% of 150. 20 is 13.33% of 150. So in here I could just add a little what percentage, right? This is what we don't know. So the way we solve that, again, is that E21 divided by G21 times 100. So the smaller number divided by the larger number. Now, because I arranged it this way, this is why you see the smaller number is still here, the larger number is still here, and that's how we get what's in the middle. We did the same thing here, same data. It's just arranged differently. All right, let's go on to the next one, the fixed cost. Well, fixed cost was $500 in that example. The variable cost was $300. The number of units, this should not be a dollar sign, my fault. Let me clear that formatting. So to clear this formatting, I can go to Format Cells. And what I'm just going to do is treat it as a number. No decimal places. Okay, so I got 100, right? So the number of units was 100. The fixed cost was 500. The variable cost was 300. Well, what's my total cost? Actually, this shouldn't be total cost. This should be cost per unit. So cost per unit. That's what we're going to put in there. So what is the cost per unit? Well, if we come back into our function bar here, we'll see. It is B27 plus B28 divided by B29. And if you read that document, it tells you that to calculate the cost per unit, what we do is we take the fixed costs plus the variable costs, so that's B27, B28, and we divide it by the number of units, which is 100. And when we do that, what we get is $8 per unit. Okay, that's important. So based on what we're doing here, in terms of break-even analysis, we can see rut row, we better be selling this for at least $8 and a penny if we want to make any money. All right, so let's look at revenue. This is stuff you're going to look at, especially if you go on for an MBA, whenever you're looking at financials. This is one of the things you're going to look at. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to be the CEO or some manager, anytime you're over the profit loss, what we also refer to as the P&L, you'll have to do something along these lines, okay? So in our example, what we had was revenue of $8,000. We had an investment that we received. We didn't pay this out, so it was received. This counts as additional profit, right? Then these were our expenditures. Well, we had cost of goods and services, or cost of goods sold, was $1,000. Operating costs were $500. We had to make a tax payment of $100. We had to make a loan payment of $100. So there are three things. When we talk about profit, when somebody says, I made a profit, well, was it a gross profit? Was it an operating profit? Excuse me. Or was it a net profit? Well, if it was a gross profit, that is calculated as our revenue minus our cost of goods and services. If it is our operating, reading excuse me again, reading the document that we had, well, that's the cost of, that's our revenue minus our cost of goods and services minus our operating costs. When we do that, we get our operating profit. Excuse me again. So our net profit, come back up here to the bar, and if you read that document, all I did was set it up exactly as the document tells me. Well, net profit is our operating profit plus our investment minus our tax payment and minus our loan payment. That gives us our net profit. So again, that's exactly how I wrote it. If you look at what's in B43, that's our operating profit. So in order to calculate net profit, we're going to take our operating profit. We're going to add our investment of $500. We're going to subtract our tax payment, which was $100. And we're going to subtract our loan payment, which was $100. And what that gives us is $6,800. So that's our net profit. All right, now the whole reason for the seminar was, one, to get you used to doing the math and stuff again, but also to calculate break-even analysis, because this is what you really have to do to understand if you're making a profit or if you're spending more than you're bringing in. So for this case, what we started with, we had a fixed cost of $2,000. We had a variable cost of $1. We had a selling price of $3. And in order to calculate our break-even point, what we have to do, if you look up here, we have to take our fixed costs and we have to divide it by the difference between our selling price and our variable costs. So one way to look at this is in the denominator. The difference between our variable costs and selling costs is $2. So what we have is $2 here, and then we have to divide that into our fixed costs, or our fixed cost divided by 2,000. And what we end up with is 1,000. So in order to break even, we have to sell 1,000 units or 1,000 cookies to just break even. Anything less is a loss. Anything more is a profit. Okay. So, like we did in our example, well, let's say our fixed costs, and again, this is what you would do as a manager or somebody over the P&L, or if you start practicing like Kaizen or lean management, Six Sigma, maybe even become a great project manager in the future. But the whole purpose of that, or not the whole purpose, but one of the main roles in that purpose, one of the main purposes of that role is to lower your break-even cost so you can make more profit. So let's say I was able to find $200 in waste and I eliminated it. Okay. Now I only have to sell 900 cookies to break even. But then I renegotiated my contract. Maybe it's with the supplies, the cookie dough, maybe the chocolate chips, whatever's in there. And I was able to get that to 75 cents. Okay. Now I can do one of two things. I can either say my break even point is 800, or I can now try to see if lowering the sale price to $2.50 will sell me more cookies. I'm sorry, will grant me more profit, though I have to sell just a few more cookies. So this is 1,028, where before it was 1,000. If I was able to get this fixed cost to 1,800 and my variable cost to 75 cents and my sell per cookie, and my selling price was $2.50, then I would only have to sell 2.8% more cookies. 2.8% more to break even. But if I kept it at, say I raised the price to 350, then I would only need to sell about 655 cookies. All right, so this is another reason why, to close this out, I like using spreadsheets for doing math. You will almost always use a spreadsheet for a P&L statement, unless you have some software, because this is where you have to keep things. And normally you'll have other headers like, this is January, February, March. This is April, May, and June. But you have to get the basics of this down. Now, with everything you learned here, when you get to Stella's Financials, which is named funny, let me fix that. Financials. Okay. When you input this data, what you're going to see, I'm not going to put the exact amount in it, but I'm going to put something like 12,500, and I'm going to put 10,000, right? And I'm going to put 12,000. I'm going to put 11,000. Okay, you'll notice the sheet will update for you. So again, do not enter any information in this red. No information in this red. No information in this red area. Okay. All right, class, that's where I'm going to leave it. This is a quick video. I'm only going to keep it up for a short while on YouTube, and then I'm going to take it down, okay? I don't know of another way how to do it at Purdue, but we'll get it fixed where it's something more permanent for you. All right, thank you. Contact me if you need help.